Good afternoon. I'll reconvene this November 7th meeting, the Board of Lane County Commissioners. Welcome, everyone. And who is it, the Cleveland Indians? Is that who have the big
Marlins?
Marlins, thank you.
They have the big crowds. Yeah.
Everybody leaves after the 7th inning. So, we had a full agenda of business this morning, completed our agenda, and we have before us Order 171107-04 in the matter of authorizing the exchange of surplus county-owned real property identified as Tax Lot 2000 on map 15040800 for 0.18 acres of land owned by Scott and Lisa Latham for right-of-way purposes for Norton Road, County Road number 200. Ms. Mokrzycki, today we have our assessor.
Surveyor.
Assessor, we just got a national award. I'll talk about that later. Excuse me.
Thank you, Chair Farr, and good afternoon, Commissioners. Joining me today is Mike Davis, who is a real property officer for Lane County Right-of-Way Services. We are here this afternoon seeking the board's approval to exchange county-owned surplus property for land owned by Scott and Lisa Latham. If this exchange is approved, the Latham land will be used for road purposes. This type of action usually would come before the board as a consent calendar item, but the fact that Scott Latham is a current Lane County employee, we thought a formal discussion before the board was warranted. As such, I will give a brief summary of the exchange that has been negotiated between the Lathams and Lane County, and I will follow up with a summary on steps that staff has taken to keep this deal an open, transparent, and arm's length transaction. The Lane County-owned surplus property is an approximate 0.43 acre parcel that was created when the board accepted and dedicated a larger portion of county-owned land for road purposes through Board Order 1703-2104. The remainder of that dedication, which is the county-owned surplus property, is located southerly from and adjacent to the Latham's property. It is not needed at this time for road or other operational uses. About 2/3 of the surplus property is covered with a 15 to 20 foot deep pit that has been used in the past to dispose of brush and other road debris. The Latham property proposed to be exchanged to Lane County is currently being used for a portion of Norton Road that was realigned in the 1930s. Lane County staff has conducted extensive research to determine the legality of the underlying title of the realigned roadway, which included research performed by Evergreen Land and Title Company. The research performed by all those mentioned failed to produce any record of the Latham property being officially acquired for road purposes, either through purchase or dedication. Knowing that Lane County had an opportunity to clean up the road records for this portion of Norton Road, staff entered into negotiations with the Lathams for a sale of the county surplus property with the consideration that would include the Latham property needed for Norton Road. Because Mr. Latham is a Lane County employee, management, along with a recommendation from Lane County Legal Counsel, directed staff to obtain an independent appraisal of both the Latham property and county surplus land. Lane County right-of-way staff hired Duncan & Brown real estate analysts to conduct the appraisal. The results of the Duncan & Brown appraisal, which is included in the board packet, valued both properties at $15,000. The value of the county surplus property is diminished because of the complication of future development of the property due to the pit. ORS 271.350 requires that a governing body shall cause the property to be appraised, and the cost of the appraisal shall be borne equally by the respective owners of the properties. Duncan & Brown invoiced Lane County $5,000 for the appraisal. Staff recently received a $2,500 check from Scott and Lisa Latham for their half of the appraisal. I would also like to note that in the interest of maintaining an arm's length transaction, the intent to sell the county surplus property was published in the Eugene Register-Guard on May 6, 2017. Lane County staff received no response to the publication. In summary, staff recommends the approval of this exchange. Lane County will dispose of surplus land that is not needed for operational uses in exchange for land that is needed for road purposes. If this exchange is approved, an order accepting the dedication from the Lathams will be brought before the board as a future consent calendar item. At this point in time, I'd like to open this up, this discussion, the questions that you may have of us.
Thank you, Mr. Louie. Questions from the board? Well, I am seeing none at this point in time. I do have one. If I were to report to someone, anybody who asked that, if this were not involving a Lane County employee, it probably would have gone by on a much lower key transaction than the one we're discussing.
That is correct.
It would have been
like I
probably
said,
a consent calendar item.
It would have been a consent calendar item, but because Mr. Latham is a county employee, we wanted to be completely open and transparent.
Perfect. Perfect. Anything you'd like to add?
No.
Well, then, we have before us Order 17-11-0704. Do I have a motion? Commissioner Bozievich.
So I'll move approval of the order.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Bozievich, seconded by Commissioner Lykin. Discussion to the motion? I see none. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Can you stick around for 21 more minutes? You had half an hour.
I know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then we will move along to a third reading and deliberations on Ordinance 1355 in the matter of a conformity determination to recognize and correct an error in the original designation and zoning of the subject tract, amending the Rural Comprehensive Plan to redesignate land from forest land to natural resource mineral, to rezone land from non-impacted forest land F1 to quarry and mine operation QM, and adopting savings and severability clauses with files. Ms. Mokrzycki, today we have Ms. Eichner and Mr. Clark.
Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners. We were last before you for the public hearing, and you had closed the public hearing but left the record open. Additional information did come into the record, and that was provided to you in your packet. Landwatch Lane County raised a number of issues. The applicant's attorney responded to those as best as she could in her final rebuttal statement. After reviewing all of the information, staff has still has not changed our recommendation. We've not proposed to change any of the findings at this point, and I am happy to go over the different topics raised, or I'm happy to just answer questions, whatever you would prefer.
Let's take the latter, and that way, if going over the questions raised is part of the questions, then we'll deal with it that way. So that is to say, if a board member asks you to do that. So we'll open this for questions. Any questions from the board? Well, then I see none. I don't have a script before me. This is an ordinance.
Yes.
So anything further that we need to consider?
I don't believe so. The record is closed at this point.
Then we have before us Ordinance 1355. Do I have a motion? Commissioner Bozievich.
So I'll move approval of ordinance number 1355 in the matter of a conformity determination to recognize and correct an error in the original designation and zoning of the subject tract, amending the Rural Comprehensive Plan to redesignate land from forest land to natural resource mineral, and to rezone the land from non-impacted forest land F1 to quarry and mine operations QM, and adopting savings and severability clauses.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Bozievich, seconded by Commissioner Lykin. Could you say that one more time, please?
I move approval.
So we have before us Ordinance 1355. Mr. Mokrzycki, this is an ordinance will require a roll call vote.
Commissioner Sorensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Bozievich?
Aye.
Commissioner Lykin?
Aye.
Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Commissioner Farr?
Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Then if you would please stay around. We have about 59 minutes before.
For the next item.
So the third reading and deliberation on Ordinance 1356 in the matter of amending the Rural Comprehensive Plan to redesignate land from forest land F to non-resource land NR, to rezone land from impacted forest land F2 to rural residential land RR10 NRES, and adopting savings and severability clauses with files. Ms. Mokrzycki, again we have Ms. Eichner.
Afternoon again. So before you today, again, the record or the public hearing was closed last time we were before you. The record was left open. Additional information was also submitted into the record by Landwatch, and then also a rebuttal by the applicant's attorney. At the last, during the public hearing, I had brought up 2 amendments I was going to adjust to the findings, and the applicant's attorney also recommended 1 additional amendment to the findings regarding the open space and scenic areas policy. I have, and then the 2 that I had brought up last time were striking of a sentence on page 7 regarding goal 2 findings, and typo of the name of a report that was previously on page 9. And I've made those findings, and I've attached a complete set of new findings to this packet to supplement the ones in my first packet. And the Landwatch again raised a number of inadequacies in the findings and in the application, and we support the attorney's responses to those and feel that they are adequately addressed. And so staff is not recommending changing we're not changing our recommendation. So I'm happy to answer any specific questions about the information.
Thank you. To the board, any questions? Commissioner Bozic.
So did you add the findings that the attorney recommended, the additional finding on open space?
Yes.
So I'm looking at council. Is that going to require a 4th reading?
No, I don't think it will. The ordinance itself isn't changing. And this,
Attached finding?
yeah, this is just supplemental to it. It's not, as I understand it, any additional conditions or to the property sort of thing, which some cases may require if we were making that sort of change, but this is just underlying support for the ordinance.
Okay.
Further questions? I see none. Mr. Moore, excuse me, do I have a motion?
Oh, sure.
Commissioner Lycan.
Hi, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move approval of Ordinance 1356, in the matter of amending the Rural Comprehensive Plan to redesignate land from forest land, F, to non-resource land, and R, to rezone land from impacted forest land, F2, to rural residential land, and adopting savings and severability clauses.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Lycan, seconded by Commissioner Bozic. Discussion to the motion. I see none. Mr. Mokrowski, this also is an ordinance. We will require a roll call vote.
Commissioner Sorensen?
No.
Commissioner Bozic?
Aye.
Commissioner Lycan?
Aye.
Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Commissioner Farr?
Aye. Passes 4-1 with Commissioner Sorensen negative. Thank you, Ms. Eichner. Thank you, Mr. Clark. We have a couple more items on our agenda for the afternoon. First is a review of assignments. Mr. Mokrowski.
So, Mr. Chair, we'll have the item related to Revision Florence that we will bring back on November 28th. That's the intent, to bring back a board order for the board to consider allocation of resources for that project. And then I had the request from Commissioner Bozic on a work session with the county clerk and county council to work together on a forward-looking set of changes to the county code to clarify when reviews of signatures for initiatives and referendums will take place. And I didn't hear a specific date. Was there a date?
No, there wasn't a date. And actually, it's not so much review of signatures, but review of the actual initiative, the legality of the actual initiative
Of the
relative
language.
to separate vote language.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on the time frame that works.
Okay.
Anything else? There was a, maybe this is not an assignment, regarding the November 28th agenda item surrounding Revision Florence.
Right, I mentioned, that was the
Oh, you
first
did
time
that?
I mentioned, yeah.
I'm reading what I'm going to say next. Okay, anything else that needs to be added? Then we'll move along. And actually, we have other business which we will leave on the agenda for subsequent to the subsequent to the executive session that is as a 2:30 time certain. But I just wanted to mention one other thing that I forgot to mention this morning. I think we've all heard of this, is that our assessor, Mike Coles, received a national award for excellence in community service through, Thomas Reuters. And just a couple of things. It was Mike Coles was one of 5 assessment and taxation professionals recognized nationally by the company. And just one statement they made was that public service is in Mike Coles' DNA. Just wanted to publicly acknowledge the fact that Mr. Coles has received national attention for the work he does in our county. Well done, Mr. Coles. Then we do have need for an executive session today. The executive session is at 2:30, and I think, Mr. Mokrajewski, if I read us into an executive session right now, that means we're in executive session while recessed for 50 minutes, which means we couldn't really talk to each other about anything, right? So I think maybe I'll recess and then call us back into regular session at 2:25 in the BCC conference room, and then read us into executive session while in regular session in BCC. And I'm looking up at Metro TV, make sure that works for them. I haven't seen anybody yelling at me, so does that seem reasonable? And at this point, we will recess until 2:25. We'll reconvene in the BCC conference room with one item on the agenda, and that is executive session. welcome to the BCC room. We will now enter into executive session. The Board of County Commissioners will meet in executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions and to consult with counsel concerning legal rights and duties of the public body with regard to the current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. This executive session is held in pursuant to ORS 192.6602E and H, which allows the Board of Commissioners to meet in executive session for the purposes listed. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision will be made in the executive session. We reserve the right to come back into public session should the need arise. Clarification, I'm 662E and H, is that all I need? Yes. And we are in executive session.